been one franchise since its inception that I've faithfully followed and played well after I've beaten the individual games. And no, it ain't a Nintendo franchise. It's Burnout. It had somewhat humble beginnings and a steady climb to greatness, but since I'm an action enthusiast, I've been a fan since day one.
The original Burnout is the only game I have for both the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube. And before you ask the question, the answer is because I felt like it. What was new about this game was driving in the wrong lane will earn you boost, and for that very reason I found the game to be fun and strategic. Its critical problem was it was terribly short. The only other cool thing about the game was that you could save your crashes. Interesting concept. Why would I want to save footage of me not crossing the finish line? Dumb question, I actually filled up several memory cards because of this feature. Burnout 2 rolled in about a year later, and it was a little more realistic, had a wider selection of cars, and it continued in the tradition of being a great arcade racer. Earning boosts was so easy in this game that you could actually chain your boosts together. Crash mode was introduced in Burnout 2, and like most genius ideas, it's not weighed down with rules. Just cause the biggest crash possible. This is actually a game that I played with my dad, but he liked it for all the wrong reasons. In Pursuit mode, your objective was to make one other car crash, and I consider that an omen of great things to follow. EA acquired the Burnout franchise at Burnout 3. It never made its way to the GameCube, so I had to buy it for the PlayStation 2. And a funny thing happened when the American publisher dumped money into the UK developer. It got really good. It was like triple the size of the second one, there was an embarrassing amount of cars, explosions were put into crash mode, and you could take down your opponents. It also got a licensed soundtrack, and everybody else thinks that's a good feature, so I'll call it a good feature too. To say that number 4, or Revenge, was more of the same just wouldn't do it justice. It was more of the same good stuff, with explosions in race mode. Not to mention traffic checking was a sweet feature. Burnout Dominator is the redheaded stepchild of the franchise. It's like number 2 meets number 4, and when they hit, they dropped crash mode and expected nobody to notice. Well, I did. That's why it was never considered Burnout 5. It's Burnout 4.5. Even the manual was a complete cop-out. Most of the game modes and menu options of Burnout Dominator are self-explanatory and therefore not covered in this manual. Enough of this history lesson, we've finally arrived at Burnout Paradise. I decided to get it for the other console that I really like, the Xbox 360. It was a long and winding path, but here we are. I don't know, perhaps reviewing a 360 game will help defer some of this fanboy hate mail that I'm getting as of late. And no, you cannot have my gamer tag, do not even bother asking. Burnout Paradise, along with having the most oxymoronistic name, is the first true next-gen Burnout. There's no loading from continent to continent, it all takes place in one city, Paradise City. So, guess what the theme song is? When you first start out in the game, you're given a Scrubs permit, and if you have an Xbox Live camera, you can put your picture on it. I don't because, honestly, I have enough accessories. But if I did have one, I'd dress up as a cowboy and change my gamer tag to Miguel.
Soy el mejor.
Every intersection in Paradise City is assigned a specific event. To start up an event, to stop at an intersection, and rev your engine. I think that's pretty creative. As you win events, you'll unlock more cars and upgrade your license. Let's get some technical stuff out of the way. For a destructive racer like this, I really want high-end graphics, and Burnout Paradise does not disappoint. I played the game at 1080i and was very satisfied. And even though your crashes are treated as a spectacle about as overhyped as, say, Mass Effect, I know at some level they're at least nice to watch. Going from video to audio, I must say that the sound effects in this game are wincingly realistic. Each car has a distinct sound, and that's something I really appreciate. As for music, it's not only a licensed soundtrack, but it's also a very interesting situation. When I said Burnout Dominator was Burnout 4.5, I wasn't just pulling your chain. Almost half of the soundtrack overlaps with that of Paradise. But while Paradise only has one version of Avril Lavigne's song Girlfriend, Dominator has 4, including Japanese. Now this really isn't a complaint about EA being lazy with their soundtracks, it's more of a complaint of how it serves as a reminder that even when I got the skrill, I can't get a girlfriend. Perhaps this will provide a little insight to the guys at work as to why I'm so angry all the time. There are a lot of modes in Burnout Paradise. Of course, there's racing, where you want a fast car with good handling, and the quickest way to earn boosts is to take down those other cars. Oh yeah, that's incredibly satisfying. For Marked Man, you want a heavily armored car. Like racing, there is a destination, but there's no timer. All you have to do is survive. Road Rage is my personal favorite. You pick a vehicle that can really throw its weight around and then make all the other cars crash, while try not to do so yourself. My personal record is 73 takedowns. That's really cool because that means I beat the record I set on Burnout 3 by 2. There are 64 roads in Paradise City, and each of them have 2 events attached to them. The first one is Time Trial, and all I have to say is, thank God I waited until I unlocked the IndyCar to try those. And the second is Showtime, their bold-faced replacement for Crash Mode. It's not nearly as good, but it still gets you into the same mindset of destructive tactical thinking. For example, you have to hit buses because they're your multipliers. And realizing that buses really don't appear on the interstate, I enabled the tactic of you only have to start on the street for it to count. You got this stunt mode which has you going across the city, jumping off things, going through billboards, attempting barrel rolls, all of which you do while boosting. First time through it's a piece of cake, but when it starts demanding that you go for 500,000 points, you feel a little discouraged. Ironically enough, I found the so-called stunt cars utterly pointless in this mode. I'm not really knocking the game, I'm just saying you don't have to use them. But there is one event that forces you to use crappy cars. Burning Route. Every car has a corresponding time trial, and that's why I was so sad when I saw the Hot Rod. Again. Come on, Criterion. This thing handles like a brick. It was a piece of crap in Burnout 2 and every other game that you dropped it in. But all in all, I'm really glad that Paradise is a game that doesn't forget its roots. It's so cool that they actually put all the songs from the first 2 games in here. I'm probably the only one who appreciates that.
With all these different modes and the great length of the game, I'd be tempted to call it near perfect. But then, we're bitch-slapped with something. You cannot restart any event. The only way to initiate an event is to go back to the original intersection. Let me illustrate why this is a problem.
So you start up an event and sacrifice a goat in hopes that the destination isn't the wind farm, but of course it is the wind farm, and halfway through you realize you're in last place and would really like to start all over. But there is no restart option, so you take the only route that you can take, and that is to quit by parking. So you drive all the way back and start up the event again, and when you get to the destination, you're in last place anyway. And you can't just move on to another event because there's nothing around the wind farm, and this creates frustration levels only previously achieved by playing Track and Field 2!
Oh, these nuts!
What would have been so hard about programming in a restart? It's easy, I'll show you! See? Now just add some interfaces to please your manager and boom, it's done! Oh man, where was I? Ah yes, frustration is no stranger to the Burnout franchise. I'm one of the very few people that I know that actually beat Burnout 3, and that's because one of the last levels has you race Indy cars on a country back road. Yes, does not compute. But there's no amount of bad stuff I could say about Burnout Paradise to sway me from my conclusion. It's a really, really good game. And here's why. A couple months back, it was a regular occurrence for everyone I know to go get slammed and play Rock Band while I was left at my apartment, cursing everything under the sun and breaking my wrists. But on the evenings that I play Burnout, I think to myself, you know what? Life is pretty good. And don't you dare call this stupid reasoning. Abraham Maslow says I need love, and Burnout was the only one providing it. So is it the best Burnout? Oh heck no, Revenge is the best. But just like every other game in the franchise, it's straight up awesome. Except for Burnout Legends on the DS. If Dominator is the redheaded stepchild, then Burnout DS is the inbred cousin. But I love all of these games. It's one of the very few universes that I don't mind being immersed in.
Do you have any idea how fast you were going, son?